My name is Narva Hansen. I have the pleasure to work together with Ragnvald and Bjarne here in Smart Energy Network. And I also work for Norwegian Offshore Wind. My passion is basically connecting scale-up startup founders to the big industry players. It's very hard to drive innovation as a startup here in Norway or in the Nordics in general. I think it is because we have plenty of money. We're doing quite well. There is not the need for urgency. If you look at the stats, in 2013, we had 39 unicorns with a 1 billion evaluation. Last year, we had 1,384 unicorns. Things are moving along quite fast. The United States had about 70%. Now they have about 48%. China has doubled. And they are really hungry for change. The question is, how much money are we spending on innovation, R&D, and on the future, which is what I believe these startups. Huawei, they spent 22 billion last year. That's about 23% of their revenue. Actually, to be able to reach those companies, those startups, those founders, not just here in Norway, but globally, and challenge them with the problems, either an internal problem that you know you cannot solve, or a bigger problem that you have to work together with other companies in order to solve. So I've had the pleasure of working close with Schønning, which is the innovation director of Wazoku, and his team. And we managed to do over 8 challenges with the big developers in Norwegian Offshore Wind, Equinor, Ørsted, Hafslund, Fred Olsen, and so on. It's been quite an interesting ride. We have now 300 companies that's registered into our platform globally, and there's going to be more to come. Being part of that, I think, is super important, and that's why we're so happy to have Schønning here to talk a little bit more about this platform, how it works, and how they've been doing together with us as well. The word is yours.
Thank you. Tusen takk, Narve. Jeg er det her på engelsk, men jeg er fra Færøyene. Men når jeg snakker om innovasjon, så er det litt lettere på engelsk. Yeah? I got the graveyard shift, so I know you have children that need to be picked up at 4 o'clock, so I'll hurry up. I was supposed to have 20 minutes, now I have like 10. So anyway, so I come from this company called Wazoku, as Narve mentioned. I want to start off with this slide here. I read an article a year ago in Forbes about Fortune 500 companies. They did research, and it said that 50 years ago, the average life expectancy of a Fortune 500 company was 75 years. Can anyone guess what it was last year when I read this article?
15.
Have you read the article? Only 15 years, right? And it's decreasing. And only 12% of the companies on the Fortune 500 list 50 years ago exist today. So my point is that there's a lot of change happening. We heard that today, AI, geopolitical risk, all these things are happening in this world. If you don't innovate as a business, you're out of business. A flatmate of mine a few years in London, he worked in a translation agency. They bring together experts to translate legal documents and so on, right? Today, with AI, you do that in a second. Back then, only 4 years ago, they would translate that by hand. And you can see the number of employees in that business have decreased 20%. The new technology is really disrupting so many markets, and that's just one example. How many of you were in Eindhoven? You were there, yeah. Got a few people that were on a study trip to Eindhoven with Smart Energy Network. Super good event. Eindhoven is a fascinating city, right? It's like the Silicon Valley of Europe. You have massive companies there, ASML, and you have Philips and so on, right? So it's like this innovation hub of Europe. But it wasn't always like this. There was a big crisis in Eindhoven. Philips is like the cornerstone of Eindhoven. Eindhoven is built around it. And it was in crisis because you have more competition from China, from the States, and so on. Philips had this traditional innovation model. They innovated in silos. You had people walk into their building, and then the gates would close, and then you had experts sitting there, and everything was very secret. Anyways, that meant that innovation was lacking behind countries like China and so on. They started letting people go. Unemployment skyrocketed to 20%, and Eindhoven was in crisis. So what did they do? Well, they embraced what we call open innovation. It's quite valuable, But the mayor of Eindhoven said, we need to change this. There's something wrong with the way we do things. So they brought together government, the industry, and academia. They founded High Tech Campus, the place we visited, and brought all those partners together to innovate. Yeah, and the government removed regulation. They started investing more in R&D, and yada yada. Yeah, today, Eindhoven is one of, it's again, the Silicon Valley of Europe. You have massive companies. ASML is the second most valuable company after Novo Nordisk in Europe. You have Philips and so many startups producing solar plants. The open innovation really worked for Eindhoven. Bill Joyce, the founder of Sun Systems, he said, look, the smart people, they don't work for Statsnet or Statskraft or Equinor. You have like many super smart people have good ideas. And open innovation allows you to tap into that talent. In Eindhoven, Bert Jan said only 1% of all ideas that they produce in high-tech campus, they make it to market. And only 3% of patents are applied. Imagine if we could increase that a little bit. We did a research at Wazoku across our client base. We work with many big companies, Fortune 500 companies. We asked them, when you have a problem to solve, how many people do you involve? It was only a handful of people, and typically the R&D team and the engineers and so on. If you calculate that as a proportion of the total human capital in those businesses, it was only 0.05%, just a tiny fraction. Also, we see in businesses that they have fragmented systems, they have offices all across the globe, there isn't collaboration across those borders, data isn't centralized, and so on. Yes, AI will help with some of that, but it won't solve all these problems. Businesses are typically very fragmented. Innovation happens in silos, just like it did in Philips back in the days. This is my CEO, Simon. Basically, we exist to change that. That's our aim. We really believe that innovation is everyone's role. Every single one of us are innovators. If we pull everyone together to solve problems, I guarantee you that we will solve those problems in a better and quicker way. So bringing people ideas and connecting them to problems is key to innovation. And that's like our motto here, Wazoku Total Innovation. We have a platform that pulls all that together. We have about 700,000 people registered on our platform. So we're talking about researchers and scientists and people from academia. It's a business that spun out of Eli Lilly in the US when they started looking at open innovation 20 years ago. So we're a small business, like 100 people or so, based in London, but we have about 700,000 people we can reach out to as well. So we're one of the world's biggest organizations as well. And these people, they've done some fascinating work for companies, right? So the way it works is companies come to us and say, we have this problem to solve. We post it on the platform. All those people are notified and they can provide ideas and solutions to those problems. They've solved about 2,500 challenges. And we're talking about challenges run by NASA, recently ran a campaign around desalination. And in return, the businesses, they pay an award to those solvers. If you have the right idea, you get $10,000 or $50,000. Did a research into the work we've done. 70% of the people that solved problems came from a different field of expertise. 80% of them didn't fit the hiring profile of those companies. So you would never have hired them as a business. A2A is an Italian energy and utilities company, very big in Italy. They have a 2030 plan to install their electric substations underground. No one wants them in their neighborhood, they're ugly, they're noisy. So let's put them underground. They did what businesses do. They checked internally if they had a design for this. Then they went out to their suppliers, but no one had it. So they came to us and said, can we launch this as a challenge to the Wazoku crowd? And it ran for 30 days. The prize was $20,000. A guy, a freelancer in Turkey, said, I have a good design. There it is. And they chose that design. And now that forms part of their $2 billion investment plan into these sub-electric stations. Not only that, this created a new business opportunity for A2A because they're not the only company that's going to move these stations underground. So it's a new business opportunity as well. We have Equinor and there's all energy. Working with Narva at Norwegian Offshore Wind, I just wanted to bring a Norwegian example into all this. Norwegian Offshore Wind is doing something similar that Eindhoven did in the 80s, right? They're bringing together industry partners, academia, and also the Wazoku crowd, 700,000 people, to innovate in the floating wind sector, right? Because if we don't solve some of the key challenges in this industry, then the industry is going to die, and then all of us are losers. So we're bringing everyone together to collaborate. And we've been running some super interesting challenges. I love the example of Equinor. They ran a challenge about how can we better maintain these floating windmills. They crack, and then there's rust and so on. How can we detect that? Now, I was sitting in the pitch competition, and one of the startups was a company that does cancer research. They also build sensors to detect cancer cells. What's the connection between that and floating offshore wind? But there was a connection, because those sensors, you can apply it to the windmills, and they can detect rust and cracks, just like with the Turkish freelancer and A2A in Italy. Can we engineer serendipity? I think open innovation really can engineer that. When you open up your problems to the world on an open innovation platform, you can create those random encounters, just like we saw in these examples. My message to everyone here is that instead of innovating in silos, all these problems that we heard about today, about the problems in the grid and so on, just put it out there. There's someone who's going to have a solution to it. So that was it. Thank you.